pilgrimage to Chartres, we often hear the word Christendom. Indeed, our pilgrimage is a pilgrimage of Christendom, and it is dedicated to Our Lady of Christendom. Furthermore, Christendom is the goal and one of the 3 pillars of our pilgrimage. In its simplest terms, Christendom is a society that lives or tries to live according to the Gospel. To live according to the Gospel is to live by applying the commandments of God, the 10 Commandments, in light of the new commandment given to us by Christ to love God and your neighbour as yourself. Christendom is a model for society which allows each individual who wants to work out their salvation as easily as possible here on earth. According to the definition of the philosopher Gustave Thibon, Christendom is a social fabric where religion penetrates through the last fold of temporal life, morals, customs, work and play. A civilization where the temporal is continuously irrigated by the eternal. It is an alliance of heaven and earth, an alliance of nations with the eternal goodness. This harmony between heaven and earth is another good definition of Christendom. An example of this harmony can be found in the Benedictine motto, Ora et Labora, prayer and work. God has placed natural law within the soul of every man. It is natural law that makes man, no matter what religion, desire peace, protect the weak, love beauty. And God, the creator of all things, unable to desire anything that is contrary, gave to Moses commandments which are only the translation of this natural law. Therefore, living according to natural law or according to God's commandment is equivalent. Already in our society, there are groups who live according to the Gospel. Think of families, of monasteries, scout troops, religious associations. Indeed, we can add our chapter to this list. Our pilgrimage to Chartres is itself a micro-Christendom. Other than the indispensable conversion of souls, the ultimate end of the pilgrimage is the temporal and supernatural common good of the physical city, in a just distinction and subordination of the temporal and the spiritual. Our pilgrimage is a start, but it is not enough. What is needed is for the nation itself to be Christian, as Joan of Arc testifies. And as the poet Charles Pegoy puts it, France and Christendom must continue. It should be pointed out that Christendom is not comparable to Muslim societies governed by Sharia law. Indeed, it is the opposite. Islam, which is a political religion, is confusion, the fusion of the spiritual and the temporal. In such a society, one can only be a citizen if they are a Muslim believer, and those who don't believe are half-citizens. There is no Christian Sharia because the Church never proposes a system which would border on ideology. With Christianity, there is no confusion between temporal power and spiritual power. But we do not want the separation being imposed by certain secularists. We want a distinction between the two, while demanding that the temporal power be irrigated by the spiritual power. We want to restore to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God, knowing that Caesar himself owes a worship to God. In short, neither the confusion of Sharia nor the separation of secularists, but the distinction of powers and submission of the whole to God. This distinction between the temporal, nature and Caesar, and the spiritual, grace and God, constitutes the secret of the proper functioning of a Christian society. But what can we do to advance Christendom? We begin by knowing the social doctrine of the Church, which can be summarized as the dignity of man, pursuit of the supreme common good and responsibility. Rereading Quas Primas, which institutes the doctrine and the feast of Christ the King, and engaging in politics if we have the vocation. John Paul II explicitly asked the laity to mobilize. No one is allowed to stay idle. And Pope Francis is even clearer. How is it possible that Catholics appear rather non-existent in the political scenario, or downright assimilated to a worldly logic? We all have a duty to act for our neighbour, so that everyone may obtain their salvation. Our salvation is our common good, and Christendom is the means of achieving it. This is the goal and one of the 3 pillars of our pilgrimage.